The morning that should having been the beginning of their happily ever after began with a soft spring light filtering through the white curtains of the Clara Duval's bedroom. The calendar showed May 15th, a date that for months had been marked in red, surrounded by small hearts and the word wedding written with unbridled enthusiasm. The night before, Clara had slept restlessly, not because of negative nerves, but because of an excitement almost childlike. After 6 years with Nathan Hale, they would finally seal his love in front of 150 guests in the church, where Clara's parents had also been married 25 years back. The digital clock was ticking the 7:30 in the morning. Tomorrow, when Clara opened the eyes, he had exactly 9 hours before walking toward the altar. 9 hours before converting in Clara Hale. 9 hours that, without she knowing it, they would change the course of his existence forever. He sat up slowly, stretching his arms while a smile was drawn in his face. The room was unusually quiet, as if the world contained the breath at what was to come. Clara extended the hand towards his space emptiness of the matrimonial bed, where Nathan had slept countless sometimes, although not last night. Tradition, Clara's mother had insisted. The groom can't see the bride before the wedding. On the white dresser was resting the wedding dress. It wasn't just any dress. It was her creation, her masterpiece as an emerging designer. Clara had spent 6 months perfecting every detail. The lace French for the bodice, the Italian silk for the skirt that cascaded like crystal water, the tiny hand-sewn crystals that captured the light like drops of dew at dawn. It was more than a dress. It was the materialization of their dreams, both professional and personal. Was so when she saw a folded piece of paper lying on top of the dress. At first, Clara smiled, thinking it was a romantic note from Nathan, perhaps one last message as her fiancé before becoming her husband. But as he approached, an inexplicable feeling of cold set in his stomach. His fingers trembled slightly when taking the paper, unfolded cautiously, like someone who fears that the content can bite him. Nathan's handwriting, normally firm and clear, was displayed trembling, almost unrecognizable. Can't do this. Forgive me. When read this, already I will be far away. Don't look for me. N. Clara read the note once, then twice, then 3 times. His eyes, they walked the lines as if by reading them repeatedly they could change their meaning, alter their reality. But the words remained immutable, nailed to paper as daggers. The weather, it seemed, stop. The sounds of the familiar house, the clinking of dishes in the kitchen, the excited voices of his mother and aunts preparing the special breakfast, the doorbell phone with congratulatory calls, they turned a distant murmur, as if Clara had suddenly found herself submerged under the water. After what could have been minutes or hours, a soft knock on the door brought her partially back to the reality. Clara? Honey, are you okay? They're already gone. Almost 60 minutes. Her mother's voice sounded worried, but still festive, oblivious to the cataclysm that had just occurred inside the room. Clara looked the clock, the 8:25. He was wearing almost an hour paralyzed, with the note between his fingers. How to respond? How to explain that his future had evaporated like fog in the sun? How put in words that man who had promised eternal love, which he had planned with she every detail of their life together, from the names of their future children to the color of the curtains in their dream home, had simply vanished. I'm finishing some details, he replied, in a voice he didn't recognize as his own, cold, distant, controlled. A voice that seemed belonged to another person, one who was not there, being destroyed from within. Clara remained still another minute, trying to process what was happening. Then, like an automaton, she headed to the bathroom. She needed water in his face, needed to feel something physical to anchor to the reality that was crumbling around him. Was so when noticed the first absence tangible. The space where he normally rested, the Nathan's toothbrush, was empty. The small shelf in the shower that used to house his special shampoo, too. Clara opened a medicine cabinet on the sink, the colony that Shiyu had given away in its last anniversary. an exclusive scent from a brand that was only sold in Italy, had disappeared. These details, these little ones' absences, confirmed it impossible. Nathan had planned this. It hadn't been a fit of rage, a crisis momentary. He had meticulously prepared his fleeing, removing their belongings one by one, probably for days or weeks, while continued looking at her eyes, kissing her, promising her a future together. Clara closed her first aid kit and then, reflected, in a mirror, saw something that froze his blood. The space void where Emily's favorite perfume used to be. Her younger sister. An expensive perfume, a gift from Clara in Emily's last birthday. A thought terrible began to form in his mind. Fragments of memories, until now harmless, began to line up like pieces of a macabre puzzle. Emily insistently offering to help with wedding preparations. Emily and Nathan laughing together when they believed that no one the watched. Calls that Nathan answered moving away. The glances that faded when Clara entered in a room where the two of them were talking. Small moments, insignificant separately, devastating when combined. The phone in his side table vibrated. A message from her mother. "Have you seen Emily? She hasn't been home since yesterday. We're worried." Clara felt that the ground beneath his feet opened like the jaws of an endless abyss. Background. It wasn't just that Nathan would have abandoned him. He had run away with Emily, his sister Small, her blood, the girl whom Clara had cared for, advised, loved. The betrayal was double, multiplied, monstrous in his magnitude. The mobile. It started ringing non-stop. The florist, the wedding planner, the bridesmaids asking what time they should arrive to prepare. The outside world was still moving in. The frequency of the happiness while Clara fell into a spiral of darkness. With movements mechanics, Clara went to the closet and took out a suitcase. She didn't think, she didn't plan. She simply acted, guided by a primary instinct of survival. She put some basic clothes, nothing white, nothing remotely reminiscent of the wedding, some personal documents, her laptop with her designs. Dewey in the sketchbook where she had brought her first designs to life. Creations. Before closing the suitcase, his eyes fell in the wedding dress. Her dress. Her dream. Now it seemed like a cruel mockery, a reminder of your naivety, of his faith blind in a love that turned out to be nothing more than an elaborate lie. For a moment he considered smash it, do it pieces like yours, heart, had been torn to pieces. But something stopped. Instead, he let there, intact on the bed, as a silent witness to everything that could have been and never would be. Clara observed herself in his full-length mirror hole. Your face. He was, pale as the marble, his eyes reddened but strangely dry, as if tears refused to flow. He didn't recognize the woman who returned the look, the Clara Duval who had lived until that moment, naive, trusting in love, had dead in that room. In her place was a stranger, marked by a betrayal that would have imagined possible. Goodbye, he whispered. Not. Only to the room that they had seen grow, but everything it represented. The family that now was fractured, the dreams that had become nightmares, the life I had planned and now lay ruined, with the suitcase in one hand and the heart turned to ashes. Clara abandoned the room. He went down the stairs while listened to his mother in the kitchen, talking animatedly with the aunts on the reception. For a second almost falters. He almost collapses and runs to the arms of her mother as when she was a child, and the world scared her. But she wasn't a little girl anymore. And the world didn't just scared. The there was destroyed, without. Make noise, Clara went out the door rear. He left no note, he did not offer explanations. I had no words to describe it indescribable. While he got into his car, one last thought crossed his mind. He would never again allow anyone had the power to destroy it that way. It would never be again vulnerable. I would never believe it again, in promises of eternal love. The Clara who loved blindly there was dead that tomorrow. The one that rose from the ashes I would be indestructible. It started the engine and walked away without looking back. There was nothing there for her anymore. 5 years, 1,825 days since Clara Duval had left behind not only his home, but also his previous identity. 5 years since that note, written with a trembling hand, had redefined the course of his existence. Saint Laurent was a vibrant, cosmopolitan, and most importantly for Clara, anonymous city. Who, located more than 800 kilometers from Riverford, was the perfect place to disappear and reinvent yourself. And reinvent yourself is exactly what Clara had made. The Studio Eclipse occupied a historic building in the artistic neighborhood of the city. An ancient warehouse of principles of the century 20 turned into a minimalist space where the elegance was mixed with subtle Gothic touches. The exterior maintained the original red brick facade, but the interior was a creation sanctuary. High ceilings with exposed beams, walls in deep gray and purple tones, mannequins distributed strategically showcasing creations that challenged conventions. This October morning, Clara was examining with critical eye a wedding dress on a central dummy. Unlike the traditional, this was an intense crimson color, almost the color of freshly spilled blood. The cut was dramatic, tight in the torso with a plunging neckline, opening from the hips in a skirt that seemed to flow like lava. Black. Lace was intertwined strategically, creating patterns that they remembered: thorns, flames, stylized scars. The tone needs to be deeper. Raw blood, not strawberry, Clara declared, touching the fabric with precise fingers. Gabriel, his 23, 2 assistant years, his eye swallowed nervously while took notes in your tablet. Stop, with an asymmetrical haircut dyed blue, wore 3 months working for Clara and still not getting used to the intensity of its boss. But the client asked for something more romantic. He dared to comment, showing the email where the bride specified his preferences. Clara got up the look. Her eyes, an intense green framed by black eyeliner, were fixed in Gabriel with the precision of a scalpel. She thinks she wants romance. But what she needs is redemption. Gabriel nodded, without dare to argue. In fashion circles, Clara Duval was known both for her genius creative as for its intransigence. He did not design what the clients asked for. He designed what they needed, even when they themselves do not know. And oddly enough, he was rarely wrong. The Studio Eclipse had become a cult name among the unconventional brides. The Clara's creations broke all the rules. Black dresses like the night, blue like deep oceans, green like primeval forests, never white, never. That was the only rule unwavering of the study. If a client insisted in he white, he is recommended. Kindly look for another designer. The lace needs to be more defined here, Clara continued, pointing the neckline. And I want you to crystals be darker, almost black, so that they only capture light at certain angles. The effect must be like dying stars. Marina, Clara's secretary and right hand, entered in he workshop with silent steps. At 55, he was a serene presence in half of creative chaos, the only person Clara allowed question their decisions or get closer when needed space. There's a call in line 2, Marina announced with expression indecipherable. He did not identify himself, but he mentioned Nathan. The weather, it seemed, stopped. The 3 assistants who worked in other dresses lifted their gaze, aware that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. In 5 years, no one in his study had pronounced that name. It was taboo. It was summoning a ghost. Clara's face remained impassive, as if carved in marble. Just a slight tick in the corner of his mouth revealed that he had heard, "Transfer her to my office," he replied with a controlled voice. Clara went to her private office, a space located in the background of the workshop, protected by frosted glass doors that became opaque at the touch of a button. Unlike the rest of the study, this room was austere. Wooden desk, dark, ergonomic chair, bookcases full of volumes on fashion history, anthropology of the dress, symbolism of colors. The walls were bare, except for a single photograph framed, the wedding dress white that he never used, hanging like a relic or perhaps a reminder. Hill the door, pressed he button to hide the crystals, and sat down in front of the phone. He took 3 deep breaths times, a exercise that there was taught your therapist during the first year, when panic attacks were frequent. He picked up the handset. "Speak," he said simply. "Clara Duval, what pleasure," answered a feminine, risque and elegant with an accent that suggested education, European and ancestral wealth. "This is Helena Voss. I think we can help each other." Clara did not respond immediately. The name it was vaguely familiar, though I couldn't quite place it, locate it. "Did you get this number?" he finally asked. A soft, almost musical laugh, but with a cutting edge under the surface. "Am good with the secrets, just like you. In fact, I know one that might interest you. Did you know that Nathan didn't stop? That there are others, like you?" Clara closed the eyes. I felt as his heart was racing, how the blood roared in their ears. 5 years of therapy, of reconstruction, of transformation of the pain in art. And it was enough hear that name to make everything shake. "Go on," he managed to articulate. "I want you to create my wedding dress," Helena declared, abruptly changing the subject. "Something unique, deep blue with silver, Gothic, on my property in Mirador Hills. A low-key spot, but steeped in history. My schedule is full for the next 18 months. "Not for me," Helena replied with calm confidence. "Because I know where he is." Clara felt as if someone had sucked all the oxygen of the room. Nathan, the others like her. Helena Voss knew too much, offered too much, and Clara knew she should hang up, that she should protect the new life that with so much effort there was built. But he couldn't. "I'm listening," he said, surrendering to the curiosity or perhaps the ghost that he had never managed to completely exercise. "My driver will pick you and your team up tomorrow at 9. Bring it necessary for a 2-week stay. The dress should be ready by then. And Clara," she paused deliberately, "I know about Emily too. I know everything." The line cut off before Clara could answer. He remained motionless for several minutes, with the headset still in the hand, as if frozen. In he time, Emily, the name that was also not spoken, the second betrayal, perhaps deeper than the first. Finally, he left the phone in its base and pressed the intercom. "Marina, cancel all my commitments for the next 2 weeks, and tell Gabriel to prepare the work team. Mobile. We're leaving tomorrow for Mirador Hills." That night, for the first time in 5 years, Clara typed. He named Nathan Hale in an internet search engine. Nothing relevant appeared, as if would have been erased from the digital existence. He tried with Emily Duval. Neither there were no significant results. It was as if both had evaporated, becoming in ghosts that only existed in his memories, or maybe in those of Helena Voss. Clara closed the computer and approached the window of his apartment, a minimalist penthouse overlooking the river that ran through Saint Laurent. The city shone under the moon waning, millions of lights contrasting with the darkness of the Darling. For 5 years had tried to bury the past. He had turned his pain in a registered trademark, your betrayal in artistic inspiration. There was built a new life, an identity new, a new purpose, and now a simple phone call threatened with everything crumbling, because there was accepted to go. What expected to find? Clara did not have answers, just the certainty that something in Helena Voss's voice, something ancient, powerful, relentless, resonated with a part of her that believed dead. The part that still was looking for answers, the part that still was bleeding. While as she packed a small suitcase, Clara made a decision. She would go to Mirador Hills. She would listen what Helena Voss had to say. I would see what secrets. He knew, but he wouldn't allow the past to destroy, not again. This time she controlled the narrative. This time she was fire, not ash. The black car was moving along a winding road that went deeper and deeper into the woods surrounding Mirador Hills. Clara watched through the tinted window as the civilization was being left behind, replaced by an increasingly dense and ancestral nature. Centuries-old oaks, pines that seemed to touch the sky, vegetation growing lushly on both sides of the path. At his side, Marina kept the fixed view in your tablet, checking the preliminary designs they had prepared based on in the brief description provided by Helena Voss. In his seat in front, Gabriel and Zoe, the other senior assistant of the study, they were talking quietly about embroidery techniques that might work for the deep blue that the client had specified. Clara barely lent attention. His mind oscillated between the present and fragments of the past that I believed having buried. The first time Nathan kissed under the rain after a party university. The manner in which Emily, then a teenager, admired her future brother-in-law. The plans they had made for your honeymoon in Greece. The exact moment in which he read that note, and his world imploded. "We're arriving," he announced. The driver, a man of expression impenetrable that had not been pronounced more than 10 words since the picked up in Saint Laurent. Clara left her lost in thought and observed the landscape that was transformed. The road now was lined with trees perfectly aligned, like silent sentinels. Far away, a structure was beginning to be made visible. The Voss mansion. The building. It looked like something out of a Victorian Gothic tale. 3 stories of gray stone, tall windows with elaborate stained glass, towers that rose like pointing fingers towards a sky, and an imposing main entrance flanked by statues of angels that, instead of appearing protective, gave the impression of judging those who they dared approach. "It's as if Dracula had hired an architect with good, I like it," Gabriel murmured, half impressed, half intimidated. "Save your wit for when you really need it. You need him," Clara warned, but without true severity. The mansion also, had struck me, though for reasons I couldn't quite articulate. There was something familiar about that construction, like an echo of a forgotten dream. The car stopped in front of the entrance. Before the driver could open the doors, a woman emerged from the house. Tall, slender, with a posture that betrayed years of education in the strictest etiquette, dressed completely in black, from the suit impeccable down to the designer stilettos. Her platinum gray hair, cut in a perfect bob that framed a face, with aristocratic features, shone in the autumn light. It must have around 60 years, but his presence was timeless, almost mythological. Helena Voss advanced toward they with the grace of a stalking panther. Elegant, fluid, potentially lethal. Clara descended of the vehicle and, for the first time in years, felt something similar to the intimidation. There had been used to being her who imposed presence in any space. Now suddenly, she was the apprentice in front of the master, Clara Duval. Helena extended a hand with long fingers adorned by a single silver ring with an amethyst of the size of a walnut. "We finally meet in person." "Mrs. Voss," Clara replied, accepting, the greeting firmly, refusing to show weakness. Helena's eyes, a blue so intense they seemed artificial, studied Clara like someone examining a jewel, looking for imperfections. "Please call me Helena. After all, we'll soon be close." The way he pronounced the word intimate made Clara feel a shiver runs through his spine. It wasn't seduction, it was something more disturbing, like a promise of complicity into something dangerous. Helena directed the look towards the team that was relegated of the vehicle. "Your team, I suppose." Clara introduced Marina, Gabriel, and Zoe. Helena introduced them, greeting with distant courtesy, but it was evident that his interest was focused exclusively on Clara. "Matthews will show you your rooms in the space I have prepared as a workshop," Helena indicated. Referring to the butler who had silently appeared behind, she said, "Unpack and rest. We'll have dinner at 8 in period. Then we will talk." Without waiting for an answer, Helena gave Average turned around and returned to the interior of the mansion, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and unanswered questions. Matthews, a man elderly with stern expression and impeccable uniform, guided them through the mansion. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers descending from ceilings very tall, tapestries medieval ones that represented mythological scenes, furniture from different eras that, surprisingly, created a harmonious whole instead of chaotic. The Voss mansion has belonged to the family for 8 generations, Matthews explained as they climbed a monumental staircase. Mrs. Helena is the last of the dynasty. Do you live alone in this place? Zoe asked, amazed by the magnitude of the building. The lady has staff at your disposal service. Naturally, Matthews replied tersely. And occasionally guests. Something. The way he pronounced guests called the Clara's attention. It sounded as if those visitors were not necessarily welcome or volunteers. Matthews them led to a wing of the mansion where they had assigned rooms individual, all decorated. With a luxury sober but indisputable, Clara received the master guest suite, a spacious room with a king-size bed canopy, furniture Art Deco, a black marble bathroom, and a privileged view of the rear gardens of the property. The workshop is in the east wing, in what used to be the music room, Matthews said. It has been equipped according to the specifications sent by the Miss Marina. Clara thanked the information with a nod. When Matthews withdrew, Clara began to unpack mechanically, but her mind was working at full speed. There was something deeply disturbing about this whole situation. Why would Helena Voss, an obviously wealthy and sophisticated woman, had specifically searched for? What did you really know about Nathan and about Emily? A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Marina, with worried expression. Are you okay? He asked, bluntly. We can go now, even if this is too much for you. Clara appreciated the Marina's loyalty. In 5 years, her secretary had become something close to a friend, or at least a staunch ally. I'm well, Clara replied, aware that it wasn't entirely true. There are too many unanswered questions. And Helena Voss seems to have the answers. Marina nodded, although his expression continued being of concern. The workshop is impressive. Already are downloading the materials we brought, but this place. Marina looked around, as if the walls could listen. There is something strange in here, as if the house itself will keep secrets. Clara approached the window. From there I could see part of the gardens designed in the French style with hedges perfectly cut into geometric patterns. In the center, a monumental fountain represented a woman with long dress, holding what appeared to be a mirror. The water sprouted of the mirror, falling cascading towards the lower pond. Have reason, Clara finally admitted. There's something about this house that's unsettling, as if already had been here before. Have you been? No. Clara frowned. You frown, it's a feeling, like déjà vu. I'm probably just tired. Marina didn't seem convinced, but she didn't insist. We should review the workshop before dinner. Check that we have everything necessary. Clara nodded and followed Marina through the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion. The east wing was noticeably different from the rest of the house, brighter, with large windows that allowed passage of natural light. The old music room had been converted into a workspace impressive, large tables, state-of-the-art mannequins, industrial sewing machines, lighting professional, and even a dye area with specialized ventilation. I must admit that the Mrs. Voss has taken very serious our requirements, Marina commented, inspecting the team. It's like having our study here, but improved. Gabriel and Zoe already. They were organizing materials, clearly excited about the possibilities it offered each space. Clara, look at this, Gabriel exclaimed, showing a closet full of fabrics. There are Japanese silks I've never seen before, and these Belgian lace is museum pieces. Clara examined the fabrics. Indeed, they were materials of exceptional quality, some almost impossible to get in the current market. Helena Voss does not skimp in expenses, he murmured, stroking a Bruges lace that was supposed to cost thousands per meter. The question is why. The sound of heels on the marble floor advertisement the arrival of someone. Everyone turned around, expecting to see Helena, but in her place appeared a woman young, about 30 years old, dressed in an impeccably cut pearl gray, tailored suit. She had an angular beauty, high cheekbones, a straight nose, thin but perfectly lined lips. Her jet-black hair was collected in a bun so tight that it seemed to stretch its fur. Miss Duval, he greeted with a slight nod. I'm Elise Chambers, personal assistant to the Mrs. Voss. I have come to inform you that dinner will be served promptly at 8. The lady requests that you dress formally for the occasion. Thank you, Miss Chambers, Clara replied, studying the newly arrival. There was something about Elise that felt disturbingly familiar, though I was sure I hadn't seen her before. Elise was about to retire when seemed to remember something. Oh, and the Mrs. Voss asked me to give this to you, he said, holding out his hand, an envelope made of thick paper sealed with red wax. It's just for your eyes. Clara took the envelope. The wax seal had an emblem, a rose with thorns intertwined with what appeared to be a stylized letter V. Thank you, said Clara, putting the envelope in a pocket of his blazer. Elise nodded curtly and withdrew, with the same controlled elegance with the one who had entered. Everyone in this house seems right out of a Hitchcock movie, Gabriel commented as Elise walked away. Elegant but creepy. Clara didn't respond. She was too focused on the envelope he had just received, whose weight seemed disproportionate to his size, as if it contained something more than paper. I'm going to get ready for dinner, he announced. Continue organizing the workshop. Tomorrow we will start working in preliminary design. Back in his room, Clara closed the door with key, something he rarely did. He took out the envelope and had examined it against the light. He could not distinguish its content, broke his seal carefully and extracted 2 objects, a photograph and a card with a single line of handwriting. The photograph showed a man with his back turned, talking to a woman young in what appeared to be an elegant cafe. The man was unmistakable to Clara, even from behind. Nathan. His posture, the way he leaned slightly the head when speaking, the cut of his hair, but now had gray strands that weren't there before there. The woman who accompanied was blonde, delicate, with an air of innocence that Clara painfully recognized. It was the same kind of innocence as her same there was had once. The card contained a single sentence, written in elegant calligraphy. He go on hunting. You weren't the first, nor Emily the last. Clara felt a chill. Hunting. The word evoked predatory, calculating images. It described an intentionality sinister after the Nathan's actions that I had never fully considered. In his pain, always I had imagined that Nathan and Emily had succumbed to a passion forbidden, betraying her in a burst of lust and selfishness. But the word hunting suggested something more systematic, more deliberate, more monstrous. He observed again the photograph. The date on the bottom corner indicated that it had been taken just 3 weeks ago. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, feeling as his breathing was accelerating. 5 years building a new life. 5 years trying to forget. And it took just 1 photograph and 9 words so that all of your carefully constructed balance would begin to wobble. She forced herself to take a deep breath. No, she wouldn't let this happen, would destabilize her. Already it was not the young naive who collapsed that day. It was Clara Duval, the designer whose name it provoked both fear and admiration in the industry. It was fire, not ash. With renewed determination, he kept the photograph and the card in her suitcase locked. Then she went to the bathroom and started getting ready for dinner. If Helena Voss wanted to play, she would find out that Clara did too. He knew how to play, and this time he wouldn't play to lose. The main dining room of the Voss mansion was a symphony of opulence contained, covered walls with wood panels dark-hand, carved, a mahogany table polished that could easily accommodate 20 diners, silver candlesticks that projected an amber light on the diners, and oil portraits of what Clara supposed were Voss ancestors watching silently from the walls. Helena presided the table, dressed with a black dinner suit that seemed to absorb the light. On the right sat Clara, dressed in a midnight blue dress that had designed for a previous collection, structured but with a fluid movement reminiscent of water dark. The rest of Clara's team occupied the opposite side of the table, next to Elise Chambers, who had barely spoken a word since the start of dinner. The conversation during the first dishes had been superficial. Comments about the trip, praise for The mansion, polite questions about the specific requirements of the dress. Helena behaved like the hostess perfect, but Clara perceived the strain underlying, the feeling that all this was a preamble to something much more significant. While the servants they withdrew the dishes of the main course, a salmon perfect, with weed reduction. Helena finally addressed the subject that floated like a ghost between them. "I suppose you have questions about the photography," he said, wiping himself the lips with a linen napkin. Clara kept his expression impassive. Gabriel, Marina, and Zoe exchanged confused glances. "Some," Clara admitted. "Mainly about how the you got." Helena gave an enigmatic smile. "I have resources and motivation. Because me?" Clara asked directly. "There are dozens of designers with more renown." Helena took a sip of red wine, holding the cup with elegant fingers. The amethyst in his ring captured the candlelight, projecting violet flashes on the white tablecloth. "Because we share something, Clara. Something that connects us in ways you don't yet understand." Helena did a gesture, and the servants discreetly left the dining room, closing the heavy oak doors behind them. The silence that followed was full of anticipation. "Nathan Hale," Helena said, as if summoning a demon. "Or should I say James Caldwell, or maybe Alexander Thornton, or any of the others' names that he has used throughout the years." Clara felt that her heart gave a overturn. James Caldwell. Alexander Thornton. Names that suggested that Nathan was much more than the man who had abandoned in his wedding day. It was a chameleon, a shadow with multiple identities. "I don't understand," he managed to articulate. Helena leaned back in his chair, studying it. "Let me be blunt. Clara, the man you knew as Nathan Hale has been scamming women for at least 15 years. Seduces women brilliant, wins its trust, manipulates them to access their resources, already whether economic, intellectual, or emotional, and then disappears only to repeat the cycle with his next victim." Clara felt the air leave her lungs. Her mind traveled inevitably to the past. Nathan showing interest in his designs, subtly suggesting changes that, in retrospect, made his creations were more commercial, more attractive to investors. Nathan encouraged her to apply for a loan, considerable to fund his first workshop. Nathan insisted in which they will combine their accounts banking before the imminence of their marriage. "But he doesn't," Clara began, stopping when she realized account of the loan. "The transferred before leaving." Helena nodded slowly. $45,000, if I'm not mistaken, almost. Exactly the same amount that he took out of the Rachel Torres's account 6 months earlier. And Layla Kapoor's before that. The names floated in the air like accusations. A flash of something, pain, recognition, crossed the Elise's eyes before disappearing behind his professional mask. "Mrs. Voss rescued me. In a difficult time in my life," he finally replied. "I owe everything I am to him." "Before Clara could inquire further, Elise added, "The library is in West Wing, first floor. Please don't be late. This is important for everyone." With those words, Elise walked away, leaving Clara with more questions than answers. An hour later, Clara was heading toward the library. I had opted for an outfit that combined professionalism with a note of defiance. Impeccably cut black trousers, a burgundy silk blouse, and a structured blazer with pronounced shoulder pads that gave an air of restrained power. His makeup was minimal but strategic. Intense red lips, eyes lined with precision. Armor for the battle that was coming. The library turned out to be a room impressive that occupied 2 floors in height, with wooden shelves dark that reached the roof, accessible by stairs, brass mobiles. Gothic windows allowed a passage of light filtered through stained glass with mythological motifs. The center of the room was dominated by a large oval wooden table polished, surrounded by dark green leather armchairs. Helena Voss was standing next to the lit fireplace, talking quietly with a African-American woman with an athletic build and impeccable posture. Around the table were already seated others 3 women, all with expressions that oscillated between expectation and apprehension. Ah, Clara. Helena greeted her as she entered. Just in time. Allow me. Introduce you to our circle. Helena pointed to the woman at his side. Rachel Torres, former Olympian and now one of the most sought-after physical trainers in the country. Rachel, with his 6 feet tall, ebony skin and build that betrayed years of physical discipline, nodded curtly. His eyes, penetrating and appraising, studied. Clara as if analyzes a possible adversary. Rachel met our man does 8 years. When he name Alexander Thornton, Helena explained. He cost me my gold medal, Rachel said gravely, and almost my career. Whole. Helena continued the presentations pointing to a woman of origin Indian, elegantly dressed, with a face that seemed sculpted by talented surgeons. Dr. Layla Kapoor, internationally renowned plastic surgeon. Layla bowed slightly the head. His hands, with long fingers and nails perfect, they rested tensely on the table. He met our man does 10 years. Then it was done call Richard Mercer. He stole a surgical technique from me innovative that I developed, explained Layla with a refined British accent. He patented it to his name and disappeared before I could prove it was mine. The next woman was young, probably no more than 25 years old, with Mediterranean features and a beauty that seemed almost painful in his intensity. Bianca Moretti, heiress of the Moretti family of Milan. Bianca was playing around nervously with a diamond bracelet, her gaze alternating between the soil and the other's women, as if unsure of belonging over there. Bianca met our man just 2 years. Guy under the name of Michael Laurent. It cost him not only money, but also a family scandal that almost destroys his last name. The last woman, sitting slightly apart from the others, had an air of authority innate. Hair blonde ash collected in a severe bun, steel gray tailored, brows and blue eyes so cold that seemed to freeze the air around them around. And finally, Paige Monroe, federal prosecutor until recently 3 years. Paige didn't do it no gesture of recognition. His gaze was fixed in Clara with the intensity of a laser. Paige was maybe the one that came closest to catching our man, when used he name of Daniel Reed. It cost him not only his heart, but his reputation professional and his career. Clara observed the circle of women, feeling a mixture of shock and belonging. Diverse women in age, origin, and profession, united by the same wound inflicted by the same hand. And you, Helena? Clara asked. How are you? You fit in this story? A heavy silence fell over the library. Helena kept the fixed gaze in. He fired for a long moment before responding. My daughter, Victoria, he finally said, in a voice that seemed come from a deep, wounded place. He the met 12 years ago, when it was done called Jonathan Black. Victoria was brilliant, beautiful, full of promise. She was barely 22 years. Helena turned around towards Clara, and for the first time, the mask of control perfect, cracked, revealing a pain so crude oil that resulted almost unbearable to witness. Victoria not only lost money and pride, Victoria took off life when discovered his deception. A shudder toward the room, a flash of something, pain, recognition, crossed the Elise's eyes before disappearing behind his professional mask. Mrs. Voss rescued me. In a difficult time in my life, he finally replied. I owe everything I am to him. Before Clara could inquire further, Elise added, the library is in West Wing, first floor. Please don't be late. This is important for everyone. With those words, Elise walked away, leaving Clara with more questions than answers. An hour later, Clara was heading toward the library. I had opted for an outfit that combined professionalism with a note of defiance, impeccably cut black trousers, a burgundy silk blouse, and a structured blazer with pronounced shoulder pads that gave an air of restrained power. His makeup was minimal but strategic. Intense red lips, eyes lined with precision, armor for the battle that was coming. The library turned out to be a room impressive that occupied 2 floors in height, with wooden shelves dark that reached the roof, accessible by stairs, brass mobiles. Gothic windows allowed a passage of light filtered through stained glass with mythological motifs. The center of the room was dominated by a large oval wooden table, polished, surrounded by dark green leather armchairs. Helena Voss was standing next to the lit fireplace, talking quietly with a African-American woman with an athletic build and impeccable posture. Around the table were already seated others, 3 women, all with expressions that oscillated between expectation and apprehension. "Ah, Clara," Helena greeted her as she entered. "Just in time. Allow me introduce you to our circle." Helena pointed to the woman at his side, Rachel Torres, former Olympian and now one of the most sought-after physical trainers in the country. Rachel, with his 6 feet tall, ebony skin and build that betrayed years of physical discipline, nodded curtly. His eyes, penetrating and appraising, studied Clara as if analyzes a possible adversary. "Rachel met our man does 8 years. When he name Alexander Thornton," Helena explained. "He cost me my gold medal," Rachel said gravely, "and almost my career. Whole." Helena continued the presentations, pointing to a woman of origin Indian, elegantly dressed, with a face that seemed sculpted by talented surgeons. Dr. Layla Kapoor, internationally renowned plastic surgeon. Layla bowed slightly the head. His hands, with long fingers and nails perfect, they rested tensely on the table. "He met our man does 10 years. Then it was done call Richard Mercer. He stole a surgical technique from me, innovative that I developed," explained Layla with a refined British accent. "He patented it to his name and disappeared before I could prove it was mine." The next woman was young, probably no more than 25 years old, with Mediterranean features and a beauty that seemed almost painful in his intensity. Bianca Moretti, heiress of the Moretti family of Milan. Bianca was playing around nervously with a diamond bracelet, her gaze alternating between the soil and the other's women, as if unsure of belonging over there. Bianca met our man just 2 years, under the name of Michael Laurent. It cost him not only money, but also a family scandal that almost destroys his last name. The last woman, sitting slightly apart from the others, had an air of authority innate. Hair blonde ash collected in a severe bun, steel gray tailored, eyebrows and blue eyes so cold that seemed to freeze the air around them around. And finally, Paige Monroe, federal prosecutor until recently 3 years. Paige didn't do it, no gesture of recognition. His gaze was fixed in Clara with the intensity of a laser. Paige was maybe the one that came closest to catching our man, when used he name of Daniel Reed. It cost him not only his heart, but his reputation professional and his career. Clara observed the circle of women, feeling a mixture of shock and belonging. Diverse women in age, origin, and profession, united by the same wound inflicted by the same hand. "And you, Helena?" Clara asked. "How are you? You fit in this story?" A heavy silence fell over the library. Helena kept the fixed gaze in. He fired for a long moment before responding. "My daughter, Victoria," he finally said, in a voice that seemed come from a deep, wounded place. "He the met 12 years ago, when it was done called Jonathan Black. Victoria was brilliant, beautiful, full of promise. She was barely 22 years. Helena turned around towards Clara, and for the first time, the mask of control, perfect, cracked, revealing a pain so crude oil that resulted almost unbearable to witness. Victoria not only lost money and pride, Victoria took off life when discovered his deception. A shudder toured the room. Elise, who had remained silently near the door, went down the look, and Clara understood suddenly the true nature of your connection with Helena. Elise was the replacement of the lost daughter. Helena's second chance to protect someone vulnerable. "Did I feel it?" Clara murmured, feeling the inadequacy of his words in the face of such a loss. Helena recovered his composure with an effort visible. "We're not here to feel sorry for ourselves, Clara. We're here to act." With a precise gesture, Helena activated a projector that Clara had not noticed until that moment. In the wall, white opposite to the chimney, appeared the picture of Nathan, or whatever his real name was, at different times, with different looks, dark hair, light hair, with a beard without. She, with glasses, with contact lenses, always. He same man, always transforming like a social chameleon. James Caldwell, Helena announced, pointing. The most recent image, where it appeared with the hair slightly gray hair and a well-groomed beard. This is your birth name, according to ours investigations. He has used at least 11 different identities in the last 15 years. Paige Monroe stood up and took control of the presentation. Their modus operandi is always the same, he explained with clinical accuracy. Identifies women with talent, resources, or position. Women bright, independent, generally in a moment of vulnerability or transition in their lives. He earns his trust slowly, adapting perfectly to what each one needs. For some, it is the unconditional support. For others, the mentor. For others, the passionate lover who makes you feel unique. Clara felt a shiver of recognition pattern. Nathan had appeared in his life just when she was fighting to be recognized as a designer, when doubted his talent and direction. Once you have his trust, continued Paige, begins the exploitation. For some, it is economic, loans, joint investments, access to accounts. For others, it is intellectual, appropriation of ideas, research, contacts professionals, and for all, absolutely all, it includes emotional manipulation. Rachel Torres intervened, and when ha obtained what you seek disappears without explanations, without remorse. It just vanishes and reappears in other city with a new name and a new one victim in look at her, Layla Kapoor added in a low voice. And so the worst thing is that it is not only carried out the material, it has taken the trust, the ability to believe, to start over. The words resonated in Clara like bells. That had been precisely his case. The material, the money, the designs that Nathan had improved and then had carried away, was insignificant compared to the destruction of its ability to trust, to open up, to believe in love. How many? Clara asked, fearing the answer. 17 that we've been able to identify, Helena replied. Probably more. 5 of them are in this room. Others 8 they have refused to participate. 3 of us couldn't locate. Them. And 1, number 17, he interrupted Paige. Emma Winters, 22 years old, heiress to a fortune in estate roots, currently engaged to James Caldwell. The wedding is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Clara felt the air leaving her lungs. Is it here, in this area? Helena exchanged a meaningful look with Paige before answering. It's in Riverford, Clara. Your hometown. In fact, the mansion where the wedding will be held belongs to the Winters, and is less than 2 miles away, kilometers from the house where you grew up. The revelation hit Clara like a physical punch. Nathan had returned to the place where it all began. It was as if he had deliberately decided to close a circle, mocking his past, of her, of everything they had shared. Why are you showing me this? Clara asked, struggling to maintain control. What expect me to do to help us stop him? Helena replied simply. To keep him from destroying Emma like he destroyed us, and perhaps to get some justice. In he process. Justice. Clara frowned. He frowned. Do you mean shares? Legal? Because yes, there is enough evidence Paige as prosecutor could. I'm not a prosecutor anymore, he interrupted Paige with bitterness. My career term when I tried. Chase him. There is always a past forward, erasing traces, manipulating testimonies. He is legally untouchable. So what? Suggest exactly. Helena looked at each of the women present before answering. We suggest setting a trap, one he can't resist, one that of exactly what he always seeks, and then, Helena paused, deliberately, takes it all away from him. The atmosphere in the library became dense, loaded. Clara felt a shiver runs through his spine. Are talking about revenge? We're talking about justice, Rachel corrected. The kind the system hasn't been able to give us. And which one would be my role in this? Clara asked. although a part of her I already sensed the answer. Helena smiled, a gesture that did not reach her eyes. Your role, dear Clara, is to create the perfect bait, a wedding dress, that captures the attention of all, included our predator. I don't understand. You'll understand, Helena assured her. But first, I need you to see something else. With another gesture, Helena changed the image of the projector. A photograph appeared that made the Clara's heart stop for a moment. Emily, her sister, with her face emaciated, the eyes sunken, sitting in what appeared to be a hospital room. Emily didn't go his accomplice, Clara, Helena said softly. It was other victim. He, the manipulated, the isolated, the used, and when it no longer served him well. Where is she? Now. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Rehabilitation. In Switzerland. It's been 2 years recovering. From the opioid addiction that developed to cope the guilt. From the trauma of discovering who really was. He man with who there was fled. Clara closed the eyes, feeling how 5 years of resentment toward his sister were beginning to transform into something different, something close to guilt. I hadn't tried to contact Emily, convinced that the betrayal had been deliberate and conscious. She never considered that Emily could be a victim. Why didn't you try? Contact me, he finally asked. Shame, Helena replied. And fear. Fear that I will never you could forgive her, even knowing the truth. Fear that the you will reject it as it is. There was made the rest of the family. Clara took a deep breath, trying to assimilate all this new information that was completely reconfiguring his comprehension of the past. The parts they fit together with painful clarity. Emily, vulnerable to the 21 years, would have been easy prey for someone like Nathan, especially if they had been preparing in secret for months, while still was with Clara. This is also overwhelming, Clara admitted, running a hand over her hair. We know, Layla intervened with empathy. We all go through that stage. The revelation, the reconfiguration of the past. The give you realize that what you thought was a story of love or personal betrayal was in fact reality, part of a pattern much bigger and more sinister. Clara looked at the women gathered around the table, recognizing in his eyes the same pain, the same anger, but also the same resolution that she was beginning to feel same. Did they find it? He asked, turning to Helena. How did you find it? Connected all these points. Helena exchanged a look with Elise before answering. After losing Victoria, I became obsessed with Find It, he explained, his voice taking on a metallic tone. I hired private investigators. I followed every lead, every rumor. When I finally got a real name and a photograph recently, I began tracing her history. Each woman I met led me to another and another. A pattern emerged, and also a purpose. Helena approached Clara, her blue eyes intense like glaciers. We can never get back what he took from us, but we can stop him from destroying lives any further. And maybe he process, recovering ourselves same. Clara held his gaze. In the Helena's eyes saw a pain as deep as the ocean, but also a fierce, relentless determination. It wasn't just the mission of a vengeful mother. It was the crusade of a woman who had found a purpose in his most devastating loss. What is the plan? Exactly, Clara finally asked. Helena smiled, more genuinely this time. That, dear Clara, is what we will go through the rest of the day arguing. During the next 6 hours in the library of the Voss mansion was conceived a plan that oscillated between the bright strategy and the dangerous obsession. Every woman contributed their specific knowledge. Rachel, her understanding of the psychology sports and the mental manipulation. Layla, her attention to detail and analytical skills. Bianca, her contacts in the world of high society. Paige, his legal knowledge and loopholes that could be exploited without crossing criminal lines. And Clara would contribute, the central element, a wedding dress that would be both a work of art and a Trojan horse, a dress that would capture everyone's attention, and specifically James Caldwell's, attracting him into a trap from which he could not escape. When the meeting finally concluded, already there was darkened. Clara returned to her room mentally, exhausted but strangely energized. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like the control returned to his hands. Already it was not simply the victim of betrayal inexplicable. She was a survivor with one purpose, one warrior with a mission. That night, sitting at her desk room, Clara began to sketch. Not the blue dress Helena had originally requested, but 2 dresses. One blue with silver for Helena, which would be publicly the official client, and another for her same. A dress red as blood, like the fire, like rage, transformed into power. Dress for him day in which she would finally confront the man who had tried to destroy her. After the shocking revelations about James Caldwell, the east wing of the Voss mansion is transformed into an operations center where art and revenge converge perfectly. For 10 intense days, Clara works in 2 crucial dresses. The official midnight blue for Helena, designed to project authority and mystery before the public, and secretly, a scarlet red dress for her itself, conceived as an emotional armor. For the confrontation imminent, the plan is meticulously structured. Helena Voss will pretend to prepare her wedding with a European diplomat, an exclusive event strategically planned to attract the James's attention, who can't resist investigating, a potential new victim wealthy. Meanwhile, each woman brings her specific skills to the plan. Paige uses her connections legal. Rachel trains Clara in emotional control techniques. Bianca activates his elite social network for spreading rumors about the exclusive Voss wedding. In a significant moment, Paige visits Clara in a workshop and analyzes how each victim processed their trauma in a unique way. While others became compulsive or relentless perfectionists in her search for justice, Clara transformed his pain in art. When Paige asks him why he never looked revenge so far, Clara confesses his deepest need, to know if at any moment of your relationship with Nathan James it was real, because this would confirm that the problem was never mine, that I was not insufficient or unworthy of love. The 10th day arrives. The expected news. James has bitten the hook, investigating the Helena's alleged wedding through several contacts. Information about Emma Winters is becoming alarming, showing all the classic signs of a victim in process: isolation, transfers financial and growing emotional dependence. The trap is set, and Clara finishes her red dress under the moonlight, preparing to burn it all and be reborn from the ashes. The day of the confrontation dawn breaks with a darling unusually clear. Voss Manor is bustling with activity with preparations for the supposed reception prenuptial. As Clara contemplates her red dress, feeling a strange calm instead of the expected nervousness. When James Caldwell finally appears in the gardens, Clara emerges with her striking red dress that immediately captures everyone's attention. The moment James sees it is recorded in your memory. Initial shock, panic momentary, and then an attempt to regain composure. Clara confronts him directly, mentioning his multiple identities. Soon, all of his victims it surrounds strategically. Rachel, Layla, Bianca, Paige, and Helena, each revealing how he, the manipulated and defrauded. Cornered. James tries to hold on control until Paige reveals her arsenal of evidence. Documents, transfers, bank statements, and sworn statements that demonstrate his multiple frauds. When police sirens begin to be heard, James finally breaks down. In a moment of apparent sincerity, he admits to Clara that what he felt for her initially was real, before his addiction to manipulating took over. Control. He also confesses that taking Emily was an error, a twisted way of maintaining a connection with Clara. That night, while James is being arrested, Helena visits Clara and mentions that Emily is making progress. In his recovery, Clara, confronting years of unjustified resentment towards his sister, accepts re-established contact with she. This moment marks her true liberation, symbolized by its decision to return to designing wedding dresses whites after 5 years of rejecting them. 3 months later, The studio Eclipse has undergone a radical transformation. Spaces open, bright walls, and, highlighted in the center, a completely white wedding dress. This dress, with subtle nuances, silver, and complex textures, represents the Clara's integration with his past without being defined by it. The reunion between Clara and Emily is emotionally intense. Emily, now in recovery but still marked by the experience, expresses his deep regret while Clara recognizes that both were victims of the same manipulator. This understanding initiates a process of reconciliation between the sisters separated by years of pain and misunderstanding. Clara updates Emily about James Caldwell, who has pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and will be released years in prison. He also tells about the brotherhood he has formed with the others women victimized, who now they support each other. Rachel teaches techniques against stress. Layla invites her to medical conferences. Bianca explores the photograph. In Saint Laurent and Helena has established a foundation for victims of emotional manipulators. When Emily expresses interest in participating in this initiative, Clara sees the possibility of transforming your shared pain in help for others. At the end of the day, while contemplating a white dress bathed in the light of the sunset, Clara decides to create a new one collection called Renaissance, dedicated to transforming the fire that destroys us in the light that guides us toward beauty, marking thus the true beginning of his rebuilt life, not in spite of his trauma, but through his transformation.